Hello, madam.
Hello, sir.
Hello, madam.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, madam. But please set your name as your display name.
Okay, so my name.
Why? Because we will take attendance.
Okay. It's like Dr. Priya, sir.
Doctor?
Priya. Shanti Priya. Okay, it is coming like this. Okay, sir. Okay. I'll just change it. I'll just rename.
Okay, madam. Yeah, then change. You can start the class.
But there are no participants, like the
Ah,
students.
it
They'll,
it will be recorded, madam.
I can start, sir.
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. So I have shared the screen. Is it audible? I mean, can you view the screen, sir? Yeah. Good afternoon, class. I am Dr. Shanti Priyam. I'm here to teach you second year zoology, that is toxicology of insecticides. I have done my PhD from Osmania University, and I also was privileged to work under National Institute of Plant Health Management in the same pesticide management division, where I'm going to teach you the toxicology of insecticides. I was very much glad to inform that I have already worked on this in my research area as well, and I'm very much happy to teach you the same too. And coming to the toxicology of insecticides, uh, in this course, we are going to have this syllabus, the contents which we are from, there are like 16 units here. You attend, do you want to attend? There are like 16 units. And the first unit covers in the block one, the first unit is like formulations and classification of insecticides. Then we'll study in the second unit, that's evaluation of insecticide toxicity. In the unit 3, we'll cover insecticides and cuticle. And in unit 4, we'll be covering effects of insecticides on the nervous system of the insects. And in block 2, we have 4 more chapters that comes under botanicals and conventional insecticides. Where in unit 5, we'll be talking about botanical insecticides. And in unit 6, organofluorines. In unit 7, organophosphorus insecticides. And in unit 8, carbamate insecticides, where we'll be talking in depth about the botanicals and conventional insecticides. And in block 3, we'll be talking about newer insecticides which have been recently developed or synthesized. In that, unit 9 will cover synthetic pyrethroids. Unit 10 will be of molecules with different chemistry. And in unit 11, we'll talk about synthetic insect control agents. Coming to block 4, that's metabolism and resistance and residues. In this, we have 5 units. Then, like unit 12 covers the photochemistry of pesticides. Unit 13 is microsomal monooxygenases. Unit 14 will cover about extra microsomal metabolism of insecticides. And unit 15 will talk about insecticide resistance. And in unit 16, we'll talk about the pesticide residues. So with this, we'll be concluding our paper of toxicology of insecticides. And today, as a class one, first class, I would like to focus much on the formulations and classifications of the insecticides. As we are done with the syllabus, so shall we start the class now? Yeah, going to the class, so we'll talk about the formulations and classifications of insecticides. Coming to the objective, today what we are going to learn is we'll study on different formulations and classifications of insecticides. So basically, what is an insecticide? We know pesticide. So what is the difference between a pesticide and an insecticide? So basically, pesticides in the sense, it was like a broad umbrella term. Like we use the pesticide for all kinds of pests. It's not particularly for insects, but it's for rodents and all the other pests whichever we come across. But particularly for insecticides, we'll be talking about insects, particularly the sites or which the chemicals or the biological agents which act against the insecticide in order to prevent the crop loss or whatever human health or whatever it is, like depending upon their application. So we know the term insecticide and we have understood the term insecticide now. So is it only one, or where that is come from, or what is the source of it and how it is developed? So we are going to talk everything today in this class. And coming to the objective, to study on different formulations and classifications of insecticides, as I have told you earlier. Coming to the introduction, insecticides are chemical or biological agents which are used to control, repel, or eliminate insects which harms crops, livestock, human health, basically whatever the human needs or human related things that are there, like crops, livestock, and human health. So whichever insects cause trouble to them will be killed by these insecticides. And their formulations and classifications are very important in understanding their effectiveness, safety, and environmental impact they have on the environment, I believe. Coming to the formulation of insecticides, insecticides are formulated to enhance their efficacy, stability, and ease of application. And the formulation process involves combining active ingredient. Active ingredient, this term comes so many times, so you have to know the meaning of the active ingredient. So if at all you have an insecticide, let it be in any form, like a powder form, dust form, or a liquid form, whatever the form it may be. But when it comes to the active ingredient, that is the percentage of the ingredient which is specifically having an insecticidal property. Because not all the formulation that you give is an active ingredient, because you will be having the other fillings too in that. But whatever the percentage that we will be taking to kill that particular insect, that is considered, which is having an insecticidal property, is considered as an active ingredient here. And active ingredients, they can be with inert substances such as solvents, emulsifiers, and stabilizers, whichever are used as fillings here. So these components allow for better distribution, retention, and penetration of the insecticides. So some common types of insecticide formulations include liquid formulations, solid formulations, and gaseous formulations. So these are all the different kinds of formulations that we are going to talk about in this class. Am I clear till now? And going to the formulations, these are like very important, like liquid formulations. Insecticides, they were not only in one form, they are in multiple forms based on their role of action and based on the insect it is going to affect and all. So coming to the liquid formulations, they are like solutions. Liquid itself indicates like a solvent form. It is like a water solvent, aqueous form, or a solvent form. So liquid formulation includes like a solutions, suspensions, emulsifiable concentrates, or flowable concentrates. Coming to the solid formulations, it can be of powders, granules, babes, or dust, anything of that. And gaseous formulation involves gas uh, like fumigants, aerosols, this all comes under gaseous formulations. So each formulation is designed for specific use based on factors like which of the insect that we are going to target, onto which environment we are going to release this insecticide, and what is the method that we are going to apply this insecticide. So based on that, we choose whether to take liquid one, solid one, or the gaseous one. Okay, and coming to the classification of insecticides. So insecticides can be classified based on various factors, based on their chemical structure, the structure they are made of, or the action they do, or the particular target insect that they're going to target. So some common methods of classifications are here. There's like chemical classification, where you get to see organophosphates, which is an example of malathion and chlorpyrifos, which are insecticides here. They are mainly organophosphates. They work by inhibiting the acetylcholine esterase, which is an enzyme that helps in the release of acetylcholine and that regulates neurotransmitters in insects. And carbamide. So by targeting this, they will be able to cause death to the insect. Carbamides. This is also another chemical classification, and this is so similar to organophosphates, but they tend to be less toxic to mammals. Examples include carbaryl in carbamides. Pyrethroids are synthetic versions of pyrethrins. They are found and they are like natural insecticides as they are present in chrysanthemum, the flower from where they will be synthesized. These are commonly used for household pest control and all. Coming to neonicotinoids. Here, neonicotinoid is very much similar to the naturally present nicotine, but it was synthesized in the lab. It was not a natural one. And examples like imidacloprid and thiamethoxam mimic the action of nicotine, affecting the insect's nervous system. So we are done with the chemical classification. Now we'll move on to the mode of action. So what does these insecticides do in the insect? So what causes that particular insect to die upon encountering these insecticides? So the basic function of these insecticides are they're neurotoxic. I mean, they target the insect's nervous system either by interfering with neurotransmitters or they can directly cause paralysis, which eventually leads to the death of the insect. And growth regulators. So these particular insecticides, they can disrupt the insect's hormonal system, thereby preventing proper development or reproduction, which will further not let the insects grow or multiply in their number. So example of that is methoprene and pyriproxyfen. And another one is contact insecticides. So kill insects upon direct contact by disrupting their metabolic or neurological process is one of the methods. And coming to the systemic insecticides, these are absorbed by plants or animals and can act when insects eat them, like ingest them, such as imidacloprid in crop plants. Sorry. And coming to the target insect classifications. So they're like many insects, right? So in that caterpillar, common mosquito, flies, and aphids, bite flies, fungus gnats, and root weevils, these all comes under insect classification. And in caterpillars, they particularly insects target the larvae of the moths and butterflies. Aphid specifically controls aphids, whiteflies, and other sucking insects. And fungus gnats and root weevils, like specifically formed for insect pests that live in the soil with termites as well. Coming to the conclusion of this, understanding the formulation and classification of insecticides is essential for their effective use in pest control while minimizing risks to humans, animals, and the environment. Their proper application ensures that the target insect populations are controlled while limiting resistance development and environmental damage. Yes, we have to limit the development of resistance in the insects because they should not be resistant to the insecticide, because if they become resistant to the insecticide, then the insect will still prevail and the damage to the crop or humankind or whatever the livestock will still happen. And overuse of these insecticides will also further lead to the environmental damage, which we do not like that to happen. And coming to the history of insecticides. So coming to the history of insecticides, it's deeply intertwined with the evolution of agriculture, public health, and the need to control the pests which harm crops and eventually spread the diseases as well. So over time, the development of insecticides has evolved from natural substances to highly refined chemical compounds. Because earlier, there is no much awareness about the synthesis or the technology or the chemicals. There's no availability of chemicals. So they used to do the insecticidal activity using natural substances as early as ancient and early uses, where they have used natural methods, like long before synthetic insecticides could prevail. Like ancient civilizations used natural substances to manage insect pests. For example, the ancient Egyptians used sulfur to control pests and diseases in crops, and insects were really repelled using plant-based substances like neem, tobacco, and pyrethrum, which will have insecticidal and fungicidal activity as well in them. So these are like natural methods, natural or age-old traditions that have been used. Along with natural method, it's also smoke and ash. So early agriculture used the smoke of burning plants or application of ashes and other natural substances to get rid of these insects. They were rudimentary but effective ways of protecting crops in that particular age. Coming to the 19th century or the British of modern insecticides, invention of Paris green has happened here. It's a copper acetoarsenic compound which initially developed as a pigment for wallpapers but was later found to be effective in killing pests, particularly the Colorado potato beetle. The particular beetle, this marked a significant shift towards using chemicals as pest control. So this led to the evolution of using chemicals, that these chemicals can also be used as pest control despite of only using natural methods and smoke and ash. And the rise of arsenic compounds have come in the late 19th century to the early 20th century, like lead arsenate were commonly found here. So they were highly toxic and are often harmful to humans and animals, but were effective in managing insect populations. But however, to be noted, they are harmful to humans and animals, which we do not want that to be happen in this present environment. So there is a need for other chemical compounds to be synthesized or identified. In early 20th century, the chemical revolution, that is the first synthetic insecticide, which happened is in the early 20th century, which was due to the search for more effective and safer insecticidal, led to the development of these synthetic chemicals. So this marked the beginning of the modern insecticide era. A major milestone was the discovery of DDT, dichlorodirphenyl trichloroethane, in 1939 by a Swiss chemist Paul Muller. So this DDT became widely used for its effectiveness against mosquitoes, lice, and other pests, particularly during and after the World War II. And the impact of World War II, the war accelerated and the development and use of these synthetic insecticides for military purpose, such as controlling lice that spread typhus. And also post-war DDT and other chemical insecticides were heavily adopted. After using them in the World War II, they were adopted to agriculture and public health programs worldwide. However, in mid-20th century, where the age of pesticides has begun, so the widespread use of DDT and other chemicals during 1940s and 50s was used in farming and for public health services. So these chemicals are very highly effective in eliminating pests, but had significant environment and health consequences, which are harmful to humans and cattle as well. So The Silent Spring, a book that was written by Rachel Carson, which has prominently and profoundly explained the harmful effects of pesticides overuse, especially DDT. So Carson's book highlighted the negative impact that pesticides produce to wildlife ecosystem and human health, triggering the environmental movement and leading to tighter regulation of these pesticides, and more research for the safety of pesticides has been started with the book Silent Spring. And in the 1970s and beyond, environmental and health concerns have been raised. Regulating and banning of certain highly toxic pesticides like DDT has been grown, where United States of Environmental Protection Agency has banned DDT for agricultural purposes, although they have used this for malaria in some regions. So this period marks shift towards more environmental friendly pest control strategies and safer alternatives of pesticides as well. The development of new insecticides. As older, more toxic chemicals were pest out, scientists developed new classes of insecticides such as pyrethroids, neonicotinoids, and growth regulators. They were designed to target pests more specifically while being less harmful to humans, animals, and the environment. And here, when we talk about the specificity, so do you think all the insects that are there in the environment are harmful and insecticides need to be targeted against them? No, no, definitely not. Because not all the insects are harmful. There are beneficial insects as well. So you have to design the insecticides in particular way that it targets specifically to the pest alone, but not to the useful insects, right? So here the word targets pest more specifically, while it has to be less harmful to humans, animals, and environment. And coming to the late 20th century and 21st century, where the rise of biopesticides had happened. And here we will be talking about biological insecticides. Biological insecticides. So what are biological insecticides or biopesticides? Right? The late 20th century, so I have seen the development of pesticides like natural insecticides, which are not much harmful to the public, humans, animals, or any environment. And these natural insecticides are particularly delivered from microorganisms, plants, or natural toxins. For example, we have BT. BT is like Bacillus thuringiensis. It is a bacterium which particularly produces specific protein which is toxic to specific insect larvae, and it became widely used in agriculture. But BT is less toxic to humans, animals, and beneficial insects. However, now in India, BT cotton has been cultivated commercially. However, there are still debates or concerns are going on, so that the other crops like BT brinjal or BT chickpeas or BT corn and BT rice as well, which affects BT rice where the particular protein that targets the stem borers, and in chickpeas the pod borers will be targeted. So that are still under research and development, but this BT cotton is being used right now. So biological insecticides are being used as biopesticides in 20th century, and they are like less harmful to humans and animals. Yet studies need to be done to further confirm the statement. And coming to the integrated pest management. So this is a very beautiful concept where with increasing resistance to chemical insecticides and concerns over environmental damage, the concept of IPM has arisen, and it was widely adopted because it's eco-friendly, sustainable approach to pest control that combines a variety of strategies which manages pest population in an efficient, environmentally responsible way. IPM combines both biologically, culturally, and chemically. And coming to the IPM, we have lots of principles in that. And that particularly like in IPM, we'll definitely identify the pest. We'll identify the pest because not all, as I told you, not all insects are pests, right? So we have to identify which insect is the pest, which affects or which is destroying the crop. And you also have to monitor it and have guidance for each pest species. And later you need to know the action threshold of it, like a threshold in the sense, if that particular pest is below the threshold or below the threshold in the sense it does not cause any harm to the crop, then it need not be treated with the insecticide until and unless it is above the threshold, which means that it needs to be treated with the insecticide in order to prevent any loss to the crop, right? And then develop strategy for this IPM and also use cultural, as we have mentioned here. IPM combines biological like ladybugs. They use ladybugs to control aphids. And Bacillus thuringiensis is also a bacterium, but still it is a caterpillar pest. And culturally, what we have to do. So what is this IPM? So what do we do in IPM culturally? Is like we can do crop rotations. It's not like we are going to crop the same crop for years and years or like that. But you have to do crop rotation so that no single crop specific pests will be present there. So the crop rotation helps us to prevent that pest and also helps the resistance that to not to happen to that pest, right? And intercropping should be done. Planting pest-resistant varieties is also advised. Adjusting planting timings is needed, and trap crops have to be used, and also main crops like intercropping in a sense. So whatever crop you have in between, you have to crop something else so that this crop itself can act as an insecticide to the other insects that harm the actual crop. And coming to the chemical methods to control pests in a way that minimizes environmental harm and promotes long-term sustainability. And coming to the current trend, so genetically modified crops. So one of the latest innovations in pest control is the development of genetically modified crops, which are resistant to certain pests. So in that, we can talk about Bacillus thuringiensis, which we have talked earlier. And I have already told you like British cotton, which is like very much widely grown in India. Yet there are concerns about British corn. But however, they are all genetically modified crops. They have been engineered to produce proteins which are toxic to insect pests, thereby reducing the need for external chemical insecticides, which harm the environment and mankind. Coming to the targeted and safer chemicals. Am I clear till now? So coming to the targeted and safer chemicals. So modern insecticides tend to go more targeted, right? So with lower toxicity in humans and to animals. So that is our major concern. So there's also greater focus on biodegradable insecticides. Yes. So whether they're biopesticides, the biopesticides are like more biodegradable as well, that break down quickly in the environment to reduce long-term ecological effects. And coming to the conclusion of this, the history of insecticides is a story of scientific innovations and its consequences. From ancient plant-based repellents to the modern chemical and biological insecticides, which gradually helps in public health, pest management, and agriculture. However, the history has also highlighted the need for careful regulations and sustainable practices to balance pest control with environment and human health concerns. So we are done with the history from early ages to the 21st century, right? So now we are going to talk about the formulations of insecticides. So insecticides come in a variety of formulations, as we have talked earlier, like they come in solid formulations, liquid formulations, and gaseous formulations. But now we are going to dive deep into the concepts of these along with their examples. So insecticides come in a variety of formulations, each designed specifically based on their use, application, and methods. So here are common types of formulations. Yeah, like solid formulations, liquid formulation, and gaseous formulation. So again, in solid formulations, we have dust, vegetable or water dispersible powders, granules, capsules, bait, etc. And in liquid formulations, we have solutions, emulsifiable concentrate, ultra-low volume formulations, suspension, etc. And gaseous, we have aerosols, fumigants, foams, smokes, and so on. Coming to the solid formulations, dusts. So this is the simplest of all the formulations and is the easiest to apply as well. So the technical material, that is the active ingredient, is mixed with an inert diluent or carriers such as clay, organic flour, pulverized minerals. So this is the most common dust formulation, and it has been sold like 2%, 5%, or 10% active ingredient dust. So all the remaining will be the filling, right? The concentrations of the dust formulation range between 0.1 to 25%, the maximum. And coming to the particle size of the dust particles, it's like 1 to 40 micron, which will pass through 325 mesh sieve. The least effective and cause wind drift leading to poor deposit on surface. So this should be the limitation of the dust, because the wind drift leads to the poor deposits on a surface. So we have to use it more, which is highly toxic to beneficial insects, because not only the pest, but also the beneficial insect will also take up this dust, which will be toxic to them as well. So it works by physically damaging the insect's exoskeleton, leading to dehydration and eventually death. And some of the dust examples are diatomaceous earth, and this also causes dehydration, particularly in ants, fleas, bedbugs, and cockroaches. Boric acid, savin, permethrin, pyrethrum, talcum powder-based insecticides for fleas, ants, and bedbugs. Sulfur dust, prominently used in grapes and roses gardening. And malathion dust, insecticidal soap dust, flea and tick, which are used to kill fleas and ticks, and they can also be used during our bedding or and all in the house as well. After dust, we have granulars in solid formulations, and granulars are nothing but they will be in a small granules form, and they coat the surface, and then they impregnate the toxicants in the granules, uh, and this leads to the insect to pick it up, right? So it is a small pellets of active ingredients sprayed onto a clay, allowing solvents to evaporate. And the size is like 0.25 to 0.38 mm. The amount of active ingredient can vary from 2 to 10%, and it can be used mainly as systemic insecticide and can be applied onto the soil or maybe placed in the bowl of leaves depending on the nature of the pest that need to be controlled. And the examples that are involved in granulars are diazinones, which predominantly acts on ants, grubs, and fleas, imidacloprid, carbaryl, chlorpyrifos, oxamyl, and oxamyl is an nematicide and insecticide that is used to control root worms, aphids, and nematodes in soil, and particularly used in potatoes and vegetables crops. And coming to fipronil, these are all the examples of granulars that you can look into it. And coming to the pellets, so these are very much similar to granules, but the manufacture is different. The active ingredient is combined with inert materials to form slurry, and this slurry is then extruded under pressure through a die and cut desired length to produce a particle that is relatively uniform in size and shape. So pellets are typically used in spot applications for a limited surface area. And these are the examples of it. Coming to the wettable powders. So wettable powders, these are concentrated dust which contain inert diluents to 50 to 75% of talc or clay and wetting agent to facilitate mixing the powder with water before spraying. So it is wet in form, the way the powder mixed with the water. So much more concentrated than dust. It is more concentrated than dust, and it contains 15 to 95% of the active ingredient. So it's highly concentrated. Do not dissolve washers and rubber hoses. It do not damage materials unsensitive to organic solvents. Vegetable powders are popular due to their high concentration of active ingredient, ease of mixing with water to create suspension. They're effective both on surfaces and systemic pest control in agriculture and residual settings. And here comes dicophol, carbaryl, triazophos, endosulfan, aphids, caterpillars, mites, crops like cotton, peanut, and vegetables. So these all are treated with wettable powders, right? Coming to the water-soluble powders. So we have read about wettable powders. Now water solubles. So they get completely solved in the water, right? That is not the case with the wettable powders. We'll make just a paste-like thing and then we'll just spray. But coming to the water-soluble powders, what will happen? They'll completely finely ground water-soluble solid which dissolves readily upon the addition of water, forming a true solution. Yeah, true solution means so you can't see any precipitate or anything. Okay. So it do not require constant agitation. and forms no precipitate. So that is what is true solution means. And that happens with water-soluble powders. And the amount of active ingredient is again 15 to 95%. So it's highly concentrated and highly effective. And you don't have to, but it is usually not more than 50% by weight, they're saying. Acidic water-soluble powder is one of the examples of it, which acts against aphids, whiteflies, caterpillars, and termites. Dimethoate, imidacloprid, malathion, thiamethoxam, methomyl. So these are all water-soluble powders control pests like aphids, caterpillars, thrips on crops such as cotton, corn, and vegetables. And tebuconazide is an insect growth regulator, which is also in water-soluble powder that control the lepidopteran and pests like caterpillars. It is effective for fruits and vegetables cropping as well. For poison bait formulations, right? So poison bait formulations are insecticides designed to attract the pests. So here, as the name itself suggests, that poison bait, where the insect will come near to the insecticide, it will consume it, and then it takes it upon it like ant. For example, an ant, when we give a borax-based ant bait, it will come, it will consume it, then it goes to its colony where it affects or where it will contaminate or it will also cause poison to the other ants, including the queen, right? So thereby it controls, they die and then that particular pest is being controlled. So here the poison bait formulations are insecticides designed to attract pests where they come and consume it, which leads to the, they ingest the toxic substance, thereby controlling the pests like ants, rodents, and cockroaches. So poison pests are very much effective for controlling pests because they allow for targeted and slow-acting control. So where pests spread the poison within their colonies or nests, they're often used in controlled environments like homes, gardens, and agricultural settings as well. So as we have taken the example of borax-based anti-bait, in case of ants. And fipronil is a specific ant bait which acts in fire ants that are the more stubborn species in ants. There are fire ants. So fipronil ant bait is best for more stubborn fire ants. And coming to hydroxymethanil ant bait, it is like a slow acting poison. And coming to rodents, even the rodents also take up, right? Like rats or mice. So bromelainol rodent bait. So what it readily does is like it is an anticoagulant. So it will not allow the blood to clot. So it prevents blood clotting, which causes death through internal hemorrhage or internal bleeding. And warfarin rodent bait also acts in the same way. It is also an anticoagulant, prevents blood clotting, which leads to death by internal bleeding. And diatomaceous earth cockroach bait. And diatomaceous earth, as we have earlier studied, it causes dehydration and eventually leads to the death as well. And coming to the liquid formulation. So we are done with the solid formulations, where we have dust, granules, baits, right? So we are coming to the liquid formulation. So what are liquid formulations? Liquid formulations itself means that the carrier is liquid, generally water, but in some instances it can be an oil or any light fuel carrier as well. And in liquid formulations, we'll be concerned about emulsifiable concentrates. So emulsifiable concentrates. So what is an emulsion? So basically emulsion is water, oil, together they don't mix, right? So water is not soluble in oil, oil is not soluble in water. But if you want to make an emulsion, you bring together both the oil and water. And in order to make them stay together, you have to give certain kind of emulsifiers or surfactants, like synthetic surfactants like twins and all like them, 20, 40, 80, 85. So these are all surfactants. They are like synthetic. We also have natural surfactants as well. So the same thing happens here. It's an oil base, and you can also have oil in water emulsions and water in oil emulsions as well. So organic phase, or the carrier can be anything here. So always solvent to which an emulsifying agent is added. As the name implies, they form an emulsion in a spray tank. The emulsifying agent allow oil-soluble active ingredients to be sprayed in water as a carrier. Right? So they often provide quick action and are used for both indoor and outdoor applications. Examples are permethrin, sapamethrin, and chlorpyrifos, controlling pests on a variety of crops, including corn and cotton. Imidacloprid, soil-dwelling pests like termites, are targeted. Coming to solution concentrates, so insecticide particles suspend in a liquid. So this is the solution, and these are like liquid formulation. So definitely insecticide particles should suspend in a liquid. An active ingredient is dissolved in a solvent, which makes it easy to dilute and apply. But before that, it has to be shaken before any application. And they tend to be less toxic to the applicator, whoever is doing the application, and are often used in agricultural settings. And solution concentrates are imidacloprid, acetamiprid, melatonin, pyriproxyfen, bifenthrin. Oil solutions. An oil solution is a formulation where the active ingredient is dissolved in a petroleum-based oil or vegetable oil or any oil as such. And the oil acts as a carrier for the active ingredient. It can be a mineral oil, which is also called as dormant oil, because it causes dormancy in early spring insects by attacking them like mites, aphids, and scales on fruit trees. Neem oil, it's a natural insecticide and fungicide for aphids, butterflies, scale, and spider mites. Rosemary oil, which is an essential oil, has also had insecticidal properties, aphids, whiteflies, and other pests. Citronella oil is a mosquitoes and flying insects. And eucalyptus oil particularly targets ants, mosquitoes, and other pests. Soybean oil insecticide. So soybean oil is used in formulations where insecticides are prepared for organic pest control. It suffocates pests like aphids, mites, and mealybugs. So coming to suspension concentrate or flowable. You can call them suspension concentrate or flowable. The manufacture of liquid flowables, also called flowables or suspension concentrates, are similar to that of the wettable powders, with the exception that the powder, dispersing agent, wetting agent, etc., are mixed with water before packaging. So the result is suspension requiring further dilution with water before use. It's often used for harder to reach areas, making them popular for a wide range of pest control needs. That's like lambda cylohexrin mosquito fleas, deltamethrin for caterpillars, beetles, and thiomethoxam, which is a neonicotinoid insect used for controlling aphids, termites, and whiteflies. And pyriproxyfen, it's a juvenile hormone analog which will kill the fleas and mosquitoes in their juvenile stage itself, not allowing them to reach their adult stage, thereby hinders at the juvenile phase itself, which is very much beneficial. So we are done with that, and now we are going to microencapsulation. So microencapsulates. So here we are going to encapsulate the insecticide. It consists of a solid or a liquid inert surrounded by a plastic or a starch coating. So this solid or liquid inert contains an active ingredient which is surrounded by a plastic or a starch coating. The major advantage of this microencapsulation is sustainable slow release, which further enhances the bioavailability. As it is slow releasing, you don't have to use more amounts of pesticides, which further again leads to human health concerns, right? Examples are pyriproxyfen, imidacloprid, spinosad, bifenthrin, lambda-cyhalothrin, azadirachtin, which is made out of neem seeds, deltamethrin, piperonyl. So azadirachtin is a natural microencapsulant insecticide. Coming to miscellaneous liquid formulations. So most liquid formulations are designed to be mixed with a carrier before application. However, some products are so ready to use, like you don't have to dilute them or you don't have to do anything to them, but you can directly use them as you purchase. But there are certain types where you have to dilute them or you don't need to dilute them as well. So this type of formulation generally will have a low concentration of active ingredient, that ready to use one. So typically the container also serves as the application device. Low and ultra low volume concentrates used in specialty situations are frequently applied undiluted. So coming to ULV concentrates are a type of insecticidal formulations that is used to apply very small volumes of pesticides to a larger area. And ULV formulations are designed for aerial or ground applications where large amounts of the insecticides would not be feasible, but a highly effective pest control is still needed. They contain high concentrations of active ingredient, meaning that only a very small amount need to be applied, and these formulations are designed to optimize effectively when applied through specialized equipment, yet they need a specialized equipment, which can be a limiting factor in this case. And coming to the examples, pyrethroids, malathion, and permethrin. So we are done with solid formulations and liquid formulations, and we will be talking about gaseous formulations. As we have read earlier, gaseous formulations involves aerosols and fumigants. Coming to the aerosols, it's like ready-to-use form of insecticides in pressurized cans. And the most commonly aerosol that we use at home is a cockroach spray, right? So cockroach spray is also in a pressurized can that releases insecticides in the form of a fine mist. They are used for direct treatment of insects on surfaces or home use in areas with insect infestation, heavy infestation. Raid ant and roach killer is like quick knockdown and control. It's also like directly it acts and it gives immediate result as well. Thermal fogging. So this involves heating a liquid insecticide. You have a liquid insecticides and you heat that in thermal fogging to create smoke-like mist. They're especially effective because the fog particles are very fine and can reach cracks, crevices, and areas that other methods may miss. So this is very much important in such areas, providing widespread coverage for pest control. So these foggers are commonly used for large-scale applications such as vector control programs for mosquitoes in agricultural settings or during pest control services in commercial buildings and homes. And examples of thermal fogging are malathion, permethrin, pyrethrum, lambda-cyhalothrin, bifenthrin, and deltamethrin. Coming to the foggers. Foggers total release aerosols. These are small devices that release insecticides as a fog or mist into the air, which targets flying insects. Foggers are localized application. So red concentrated deep reach foggers, hot shot fogger with odor neutralizer. So here it is an additional uh, advantage that it also neutralizes the odor which comes from the foggers in hot shot fogger with odor neutralizer. Coming to the fumigants. Fumigant insecticides are gases or volatile liquids that are used to control pests by penetrating structures or soil and killing the insects, their larvae, and the eggs. So commonly used in agriculture, warehouses where we generally store grains like FCI, Food Corporation of India, where they procure grains, rice, wheat, corn, so whatever. So in that particular area, there is like high infestation where you have to use fumigants on the recommended usage levels and control the pest in order to keep the grains safe and sound. The fumigants are designed to permit a whole space, and it is like you cover the entire place and then you use the fumigants. For example, methyl bromide, phosphine, sulfuran fluoride, hydrogen cyanide, dichlorvos, tetrachlorvinphos, chloropicrin. It's a soil fumigation to control nematodes, fungi, and insect pests as well. Other special formulations are, which is there in your syllabus, is slow release formulations. So here, slow release formulations are very much beneficial because it targets the insect and it releases the insecticide in a very slow and steady controlled manner so that you don't have to use higher concentrations of pesticides and cause harm to human and environment, right? So slow release formulations here, this provides a controlled release of the insecticide over a longer period, reducing the need for frequent applications, reapplication. These formulations are used to improve the efficiency and sustainability of pest control, well as minimizing environmental impact and harm to non-target species. So mechanisms like encapsulation, microencapsulation, matrix systems, granules of pellets are some of the examples of slow release formulations. So coming to the functions and classifications of insecticides. So according to the route of entry, we are going to classify the insecticides now, like how they enter the body of the insect, right? So how they're influencing it. So in fact, insecticides can be classified based on the route of entry into the insect's body, and it can be through contact, ingestion, inhalation, it can be through any way. And coming to the contact insecticides, what do they do? When they come into the contact of the insect, what do they do? So they eventually, when they come into the contact, they disrupt the insect's nervous system, metabolism, and protective barriers. And examples of such are pyrethroids, which disrupts the nerve impulses, affecting the sodium channels in insect's nervous system. Organochlorines, they put example DDT, affects the insect's nervous system by interfering with nerve transmission. So this is how they cause toxic effect to the insect by contact. When taken orally or when they are ingested by the insect, what do they do? So insect consumes the chemical, then which enters into the digestive system, thereby causing harm. And the best examples of this are organophosphates, which targets the nervous system by inhibiting acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme needed for nerve function. Carbamates, similar to organophosphates as well. And if at all, if the insect inhales it, what will happen? So if the insect inhales it, the released gas that affects insects via the respiratory system when they inhale the toxic fumes. And examples are methyl bromide. It's a fumigant which controls pests in stored products and greenhouses and warehouses as well. Phosphorphine is a grain fumigation affecting insect respiratory system. Systemic insecticides. So what does it do to the system, right? So systemic insecticides means when an insect, when it feeds on the plant get takes up the insecticides, means the insecticides are absorbed by the plants, and when the insect will come and feed on the plant, the chemical will go into the stomach of the insect, and this type of insecticides will harm its digestive system and eventually leading to the death. And these can be applied in soil, water, and directly to the plant. This type of insecticides, example, neonicotinoids and imidaclopride, which blocks the nervous system and nerve transmissions. Repellents are something which will repel or reject, right? So although not typically lethal, this is not lethal, but they'll try to avoid it. So repellents are used to deter insects from entering certain areas or feeding on plants. They often work by masking the natural odor or by creating an unpleasant environment for the insect. Example, DEET and diethyl metatolamide, common in mosquito repellents. Picaridin, another repellent used to keep insects away. Each of these insects work through different pathways affecting insects' very important processes like nerve system, digestive system, and their ability to breathe, which will gradually lead to their death and making the function of the insecticide more powerful. Coming to the mode of action. Okay, now we know how they're entering into the insect, to contact, to ingestion, or to systematic, whatever the way we have mentioned earlier. So we have to see how do they act upon going into them. So it was breaking down as now. So nerve system disruptors. So one way that the mode of action they do is like nerve system disruptors. As we have talked earlier, affecting the nervous system, for example, pyrethroids, organophosphates, carbamates, neonicotinoids, they all will make the nervous system damage, which eventually leads to paralysis, nerve firing, and death. And later, it's respiratory system disruptors, particularly fumigants like methyl bromide and phosphine, which prevents the insect from breathing or interfere with oxygen transport, leading to suffocation or poisoning. And next comes the growth regulators. The third is growth regulators, insect growth regulators. So these insecticides interfere with the normal growth and development of the insect, often affecting molting or reproduction. So functions is like it disrupts the insect's ability to molt or grow properly. often leading to death before the insect can mature into an adult. Examples are chitin synthesis inhibitors, and chitin is present in the insect's exoskeleton, which is not being formed due to the inhibitors. Juvenile hormone analog, which will not let the insect grow into an adult, and agonist affects the hormone ecdysone, which is responsible for molting in insects, causing improper molting or death. Coming to energy metabolism disruptors, so insect energy production or utilization will be interfered, causing metabolic failures. And functions inhibit the production of ATP, leading to the death of the insect by depriving it of necessary energy sources. Examples like ivermectins, diazepams are energy metabolism disruptors. Physical or mechanical actions are also being there, like dehydration, and damage the insect exoskeleton or absorb moisture, leading to dehydration or the breakdown of its protective barriers, which were done by diatomaceous earth and silica gel, which dry out the insect's body. And feeding inhibitors. These insecticides affect the insect's ability to feed or digest food, leading to starvation or inhibition of digestions. So functions are, it inhibits feeding or digestion, prevents the insect from obtaining necessary nutrients, which further leads to death by starvation. And examples of this are thiamethoxam and centraniliprole. Centraniliprole, a type of anthranilic diamide that disrupts the insect's muscle function, preventing feeding. Contact poisons as well. Now we are talking about these insecticides affect the insect upon direct contact with body surface, either by interfering with its exoskeleton or causing toxicity. Examples are permethrin and bifenthrin. Repellents. Repellents DEET, that we have already mentioned earlier. So we are done with and then we will be talking about the chemical structure now. So insecticides can also be classified based on their chemical structure. So that is more important to determine the toxicity, mechanism of action, and the effectiveness against different kinds of pests, right? So coming to the chemical structure, organochlorines. Organochlorine, as the name suggests, it contains chlorine atoms attached to carbon atoms, often in a benzene ring structure or similar hydrocarbon compound like this. It is the structure of DDT and organochlorine pesticide. Right? It functions primarily affects the insect's nervous system by interfering with the transmission of nerves impulses. They are persistent in the environment and accumulates in organisms. And examples are lindane. Organophosphates. So we have talked about organochlorine, and now we are going to talk about organophosphate. So here, there's the chlorine compound, and here the chlorine atom, and here the phosphorus atom is bonded to oxygen atom, and various organic groups. So this compound is structurally similar to phosphoric acid derivatives. And here you can see the structure, the general chemical structure of organophosphates with the phosphate group in the middle of it and the functional groups around it. It inhibits the acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter in the nervous system, leading to continuous nerve stimulation and paralysis. And examples are malathion, parathion. Carbamates. Carbamates are derived from carbamic acid. These insects contain a carbamate group, and HCOO group contained to an organic compound. Functions like organophosphates and carbamates also inhibit acetylcholinesterase, which affects the nervous system. Examples are carbaryl and methomyl. And the properties are like generally less toxic to humans and animals than organophosphates, but still hazardous, and they degrade quickly in the environment. Pyrethroids. Chemical structure. So synthetic derivatives of pyrethrians, and they are naturally occurring compounds which are present in the flower chrysanthemum. So they contain a cyclic structure with an ester group. So these are pyrethroids. Functions, they affect the nervous system by altering the flow of sodium ions across nerve membranes, resulting in prolonged nerve impulse transmission, paralysis, and death. Example of permethrin, cypermethrin, and all. Neonicotinoids. So chemical structure, structurally similar to nicotine, yet as I have told you earlier, it was a synthesized one, but it was similar to the structure of a nicotine containing a nitrogen atom and derived from a nicotine molecular structure. Function, they act on insect nervous system by binding to acetylcholine transreceptors, leading to overstimulation, paralysis, and death. Examples are imidacloprid, thiamethoxam. Ivermectins. Ivermectins are derived from a group of compounds known as macrolide lactones, which contain a large ring structure with several oxygen atoms and carbon groups. Like you can see here in the structure, like several oxygen atoms are present to the carbon structure or carbon group. And it functions it's an insecticide targets the nervous system by enhancing the release of neurotransmitters, leading to paralysis in insect. They also have an effect on the insect's ability to absorb nutrients. Examples are abamectin. Insect growth regulators. Chemical structures, these insects are usually synthetic compounds which are similar to that of the natural hormones in insects affecting the growth and development, which interferes with the natural hormones in insects. And these insect growth regulators, they disrupt the molting or reproduction process of the insects, preventing the larva to reach maturity or inhibits egg hatching. Examples are methoprin. It's a juvenile hormone analog which prevents the larvae to get mature. So if the larva doesn't get mature, then definitely there is no insect, right? So it is the methoprin chemical structure. Examples are diflubenzuron. Biorational insecticides. So chemical structure. These insects are naturally derived or mimic natural substances, unique chemical structures specific to their biological origin, and they function by targeting specific threats without affecting other organisms, and often have low toxicity to humans and animals. Example is Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacterium, and azadirachtin, which is a neem tree derived one from neem seeds. It works as a growth regulator, repellent, and feeding deterrent. Pyrroles. Pyrroles is an insecticide, have a pyrrole ring structure, often with halogen substituents. This is the pyrrole, chemical structure of a pyrrole. The structure of with the pyrrole ring. Pyrroles inhibits the production of ATP in the insect cells by interfering with mitochondrial function, leading to insect death due to energy depletion. Example of chlorpheniramine. Fibrils. Chemical structure of fibrils belongs to a class of chemicals that contain a triazole ring structure and a fluorine atom attached to the carbon backbone. They inhibit the insect's central nervous system by blocking GABA receptors, leading to hyperexcitation and eventual death. This is the structure of the fipronil, right? Yeah. So we have read about the physiological condition and the mode of action, but we are in our syllabus it is also there like insecticide resistance action committee. They have done the classification of the insecticides based on their mode of action, and we are going to see them now. So they have classified insecticides based on their mode of action, which describes how the insecticide is disrupting the insect's biology or physiology, right? So what they have done here is like they have categorized or they have grouped based on different things like neurotoxic insecticides, which are toxic to the sodium. In that, it will come under sodium channel modulators, which affects the nervous system, particularly sodium channels, GABA-gated chloride channel blockers, like fipronil, how we have talked earlier, and glutamate-gated chloride channel modulators. They are also similar to the mode of action that we have discussed earlier, but they are like more specific and more physiologically explained. Coming to the growth regulators, they have talked about chitin synthesis inhibitors, buprofezin and diflubenzuron, and juvenile hormone mimics like methoprin and pyroxene, which mimics the action of juvenile hormones, preventing the insect from developing into an adult. Eptisone agonist as well, which is example of phenoxycard and tabuphenolzide are the examples of eptisone. And coming to respiratory inhibitors, it's like complex 1 NADH inhibitor, which inhibits the mitochondrial respiration, leading to energy depletion and eventual death of the insect. Example is rotenol. And complex 2 succinate inhibitors, which is also involved in the mitochondrial respiratory chain, leading to the lack of energy. And the example is regard. Insecticides that affect the digestive system. So these insecticides are primarily ingested by the insect and act on its digestive processes. So what comes under it? Acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. Like we have talked earlier, like it is overstimulated in the nervous system, right? It overstimulates acetylcholine in the nervous system. Examples: organophosphates and carbamide. Nicotine receptor agonists. They bind to nicotine acetylcholine receptors in the insect nervous system, causing overstimulation, thereby paralysis, and then death. Examples of neonicotinoids that are synthesized in the lab. Group 5, like how they have grouped, the group 5 is metabolic process disruptors. So these insecticides affect the insect's internal metabolism, such as energy production or digestion, inhibitors of ATP synthesis. Example, ivermectins, uncouplers of oxidative phosphorylation, which disrupt the process by which cells produce ATP from nutrients, causing energy depletions. Examples are doxepin. And insecticides targeting the cuticle or exoskeleton, like we have talked about the chitin, right? These insecticides affect the insect's protective outer structure, the exoskeleton. Desiccants and physical barriers. These insecticides remove the moisture or affect the structural integrity of the insect's exoskeleton, leading to dehydration. Examples are diatomaceous earth and silica gel. Group 7 is insecticides that affect the cell cycle. So mitotic inhibitors, it disrupts the cell division by inhibiting mitosis, leading to cell death or growth inhibition. Examples are chlorpyrifos. And the importance of IRAC classifications are the resistant management. By using insecticides from different mode of action groups, the development of resistance can be managed more effectively. And pest control can also be done by understanding the mode of action helps in choosing the right insecticide for the target pest, optimizing the pest control programs. So IRA's classification system is a valuable tool for understanding how insecticidal work and ensuring that insecticide use is effective and sustainable over the period of time. Coming to inorganic compounds. Insecticides based on inorganic compounds are classified like this. And so basically, what are inorganic compounds? Which are not organic, right? So organic compounds, they contain carbon-hydrogen bonds, definitely. So inorganic compounds, they do not contain carbon-hydrogen bonds. And mostly they are synthesized, synthetically made. Of that becomes the arsenic compounds. And the mode of action of the arsenic compounds are toxic to insects. How they are toxic? They inhibit cell respiration and disrupting enzymes. And disrupts the enzymes. So arsenic interferes with the insect's metabolism, causing organ damage and death. Example is arsenic trioxide, lead arsenate. After arsenic, we have boric acid. Boric acid is ingested or when contacted, it acts as a stomach poisoning, thereby disrupting the insect's digestive system, causing it dehydrating. Examples of boric acid powder. The example is boric acid powder. Diatomaceous earth consists of fossilized remains of diatoms, specifically microscopic algae. The fine particles of this powder physically damage the exoskeleton of insects, causing them dehydration by absorbing the oils and fats from their outer cuticle. Examples: diatomaceous earth powder, calcium polysulfate. The mode of action is calcium polysulfate is a sulfur-based compound which has insecticidal properties. It disrupts the insect's exoskeleton and respiratory processes, leading to suffocation and dehydration. Examples are lime sulfur. Copper compounds. So how does copper affect? So the mode of action is such as copper sulfate. They have fungicidal property, which is toxic. They disrupt the insect's metabolic process and are toxic when ingested. Example is copper sulfate. It is a fungicide but can also control certain insect pests. Properties: effective in controlling certain pests but also toxic to non-target organisms. So that is not beneficial for us. Yet it is used. Sulfur compounds. Mode of action: sulfur is toxic to insects by inhibiting their ability to respire. It is often used as both an insecticide and fungicide. Example: sulfur dust or wettable sulfur. And this is a table where you can see different inorganic compounds, their mode of action, along with their examples and properties. Okay. Coming to the advantages and disadvantages of inorganic insecticides are, there's a long history of use. Many inorganic insecticides have been used for centuries, providing a proven track record of efficacy. So there is nothing like we have to neglect them. Definitely they are, since so long, they have been used very effectively and effective against wide range of pests and less chemical residues. In many cases, inorganic insecticides are less persistent in the environment compared to some organic insecticides, making them less likely to bioaccumulate. Limitations, toxicity. So coming to the limitations, yes, toxicity. Many inorganic insecticides are highly toxic to humans and animals and beneficial organisms, which can limit their safe use in certain environments. And environmental impacts, some like arsenic compounds can contaminate soil and water and remain in the environment for a long period of times, of which arsenic is very much dangerous, and it also causes lung cancer if the contaminated water is drank. Resistance. Insects can develop resistance to certain inorganic insecticides, though this is often less common compared to organic insecticides. So inorganic insects are still used today, especially in organic farming and gardening, due to the low environmental persistence and effectiveness. However, their use is generally limited due to their toxicity and the availability of safer, more targeted alternatives. Coming to the summary, I have summarized the most important points of the today's lecture here. Like summary of routes of entry, like contact, ingestion, inhalation, systemic and repellent waste. And based on the mode of action, the nerve system disruptors, respiratory system disruptors, growth regulators, energy metabolism disruptors, physical or mechanical actions, feeding inhibitors, contact poisons, and repellents. And summary of the chemical structure-based classifications like organochlorines, organophosphates, carbamates, pyrethroids, neonicotinoids, ivermectins, insect growth regulators, biorational insects, pyrroles, and fibrils. And based on the IRAC mode of action group summary also, there are like 7 groups, of which the most important can be taken from this summary. And importance of IRAC classification, like we have earlier discussed, resistance management and pest control. IRA's classification system is valuable tool for understanding how insecticide works and ensuring that insecticide use is effective and sustainable over time. And this is a summary of the chart that we've done. So with this, we have covered the first unit along with the summary. If at all you have any queries, you can ask me now or in the next session, that is tomorrow, which we'll be having at 1:30 to 3 o'clock. And I would like to inform to all the students to join in time without any absentees, so that you get to ask questions and we get to discuss about the concepts that you don't really get while I'm teaching or something. Like you'll get to ask me questions. I don't want any of you all to miss that. So as we have seen in the syllabus, like the first one, formulations and classifications of insecticides. So in that, I hope you all understood the concepts here. Once go through the material and also read once and come tomorrow. So with this, we have finished the objective successfully. That is the study on different formulations and classifications of insecticides. Thank you. Any queries?